Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is Ms. Robinson. Today we are going to talk about paradigms and principles as we prepare to read into our 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens book. So in order to do this activity, we're going to have to start thinking about both of these concepts, both in definition, so learning what are they, as well as looking kind of introspectively at ourselves and asking how do these two things, both paradigms and principles, define and affect the way we live our lives. So before we do this, let's read some really dumb, kind of quote unquote dumb quotes. As we read through these, I want you to think about each quote, and then you're going to kind of respond to them after we read through all of them. So I want you to think about not only what the quote is, but who is saying the quote and in what year, and I'll try to give you a little bit of context. So to start this off, we're going to start with a quote that says, "There is no reason for any individual to have a computer in their home." This quote was made by Kenneth Olson, who was the president and founder of the Digital Equipment Corporation in 1977. So this was pretty much before most people had a computer in their homes. And there was not widespread internet until the late 90s. So thinking about that in your brain, this is about 20 years beforehand. This person thought there was no reason for anybody to have a computer in your home. And here you are listening to this lecture on a computer. Next quote is that airplanes are interesting toys, but of no military value. This quote was made in the year 1911, so this was well before the airplanes were in widespread usage, but this was made by a military strategist, a French military strategist, Marshal Ferdinand Foch, and he said this quote about airplanes. This quote says, "Man will never reach the moon, regardless of all future scientific advances." Whoa, that's a quote. Dr. Lee DeForest was the inventor and the father of modern radio. He said this in 1967. The moon was reached by Americans in 1969. So this is only 2 years before we actually did reach the moon, and this man swore we would never do it. This quote says, "Television won't be able to hold on to any market it captures after the first 6 months. People will soon get tired of staring at a plywood box every night." Darryl F. Zanuck, who is the head of 20th Century Fox, which is actually now a television corporation, this was in the year 1946. So this was as radio was really being popularized, but television really did kind of start to capture the market really soon after that, and it has stuck ever since. So you guys are still watching TV today, although it does look a little different right now. It's more streaming platforms than cable, but it definitely has evolved farther than this man ever thought it would. This quote says, "We don't like their sound. Groups of guitars are on the way out." This is Decca Records, which is a record label, as they were rejecting the Beatles. So they heard the Beatles demo, and this was the quote that was recorded as they were rejecting them. This was in the year 1962. And as we all know, if you've heard of the group Beatles, if you haven't, do a quick Google. The group The Beatles became one of the most popular recording groups of all time. They're still selling records today after their death. So groups of guitars being on the way out maybe didn't happen. For the majority of people, the use of tobacco has a beneficial effect. This is Dr. Ian G. McDonald of the Los Angeles Surgeons in 1969. So in the year 1969, which was not very long ago, only about 50 years ago, this person really thought tobacco had a beneficial effect. Soon after that, we learned it did not. This telephone, quote, "has too many shortcomings to be seriously considered as a means of communication. The device is inherently of no value to us." This quote was made by Western Union Travel in 1876. As many of you are probably watching this lecture on a telephone, this obviously did not catch either. The Earth is the center of the universe. This quote was made by Ptolemy the Great in the 2nd century, so a very long time ago. But we quite soon after that figured out the Earth is not, in fact, the center of the whole universe, despite what you all may think about yourselves. Maybe you think you're the center of the universe, but scientifically it's not. Nothing of importance happened today. This was King George of England on July 4th, 1776. If you're not sure about that date, the 4th of July, 1776 is American Independence Day. This is when the Declaration of Independence was written and then adopted. So nothing of importance happened for him. And then he found out what did in fact happen on that day. He lost his colony. 2 years from now, spam will be solved. This is Bill Gates in the year 2004. As of this point, you might be listening to this lecture far in the future, years from now, and maybe spam will be solved. But as of now, I still get spam, and you probably still do too. So what do all of these quotes have in common? Thinking about the reasons that we think these quotes seem so dumb to us. Is it hindsight? Is it whatever? So I want you to think about and respond to this question in the Google form. So please pause the video right now and then head on over to the Google form in order to answer this question. So hopefully you have gone and answered the Google form by now, and you've got to think about this a little bit. So let's think about kind of why we think these quotes are quote unquote dumb, right? So let's make some generalizations about these things. They're all from a long time ago. So we have the benefit of what we call hindsight. So we get to look back at them and we know what has happened in the meantime, right? I was giving you historical context, and that's because we have it, right? So these quotes being made a long time ago, we now are in the future looking back. And they've been disproved, right? We know better now. We know TV is going to be a hit forever. We know that the computers have taken over the world. So all of these people, although in the moment they might have thought they were correct, they were being limited by their vision of the time. And we're viewing it with 2020 hindsight. And we know that these quotes are incorrect. So why does that make us so sure, right? We're so sure because we have the benefit of knowing, but looking into the future, right, we don't know what's coming in the future. So we might be saying things just like they are right now. So with that in mind, let's look at a couple more quotes. And this time it's going to be from students like yourself. So we're moving into the next section of the Google form. So if you have not moved into that next section, you can go ahead and move on now. And then go ahead and watch the rest of this video. So reading some more quotes. So one of these quotes says that no one in my family has ever gone to college. I would be crazy to think I could make it. Let's think about that one for a little bit. Another quote says, it's no use. My stepdad and I will never get along. We are just too different. She's so pretty. I bet she's such a diva. And the last one we're going to look at today is it's impossible to get a job around here because nobody wants to hire a teenager. So let's compare a little bit, right? Let's think about and use the same perspective as we did when we were talking about those other quote unquote dumb quotes, right? The reason we think that the other ones are dumb is because we have the perspective of hindsight, right? We know that they didn't work out in history. So these quotes, right, all of them together, right, they're all can't quotes. So thinking about TV one, right, it's saying, oh, TV will never be popular. It'll never make it past the first 6 months. The internet, right, computers will never be in every household. Man will never land on the moon, right? They're all focusing on the negative, that they can't do something. And then so many of them were disproved. They focus on the obstacle and the problem instead of a possible solution. So all these quotes have that kind of negative self-talk in common. Even thinking back to the quotes from our students, right? The girl thought, or the guy thought that them and their stepdad would never get along, right? They'd never be able to do it. They were too different. It was impossible. Another student said that they would never go to college because nobody in their family had, right? Do you hear kind of the negative self-talk? So that's what all of these quotes really have in common. And although we view half of them as dumb, the other ones, maybe when you listen to those quotes from that students, you agree with some of them. So while we're talking about ourselves, or while we're talking about others, right? Even the one quote about the other girl being a diva, or that person being a diva, she's so pretty, she must be a diva. when we hear those kind of quotes, instead of thinking that they're true, we need to have that kind of hindsight perspective of saying, oh, why am I saying that I can't do something, or this isn't possible, right? Or the person is definitely this way. Would I say this if I knew what was going to happen in the future? So we have to shift our perspective just a little bit. So now I want you to think and respond again in the Google form. How does changing our way of thinking impact our life and our success? And I want you to specifically think about one of those quotes that we used in the examples. So you could go back and rewind if you need to refresh your memory on what any of those quotes were. But I kind of want you to look back on them and think about how maybe if that person changed their way of thinking, took out the negative self-talk, how could that impact their life and their success? So you're going to go ahead and respond to this in the Google form. Please pause the video here and I'll give you some time to respond. So hopefully you have responded in the Google form. We're going to again move forward to the next section. So in the Google form, there is a quick story that is posted in there in a picture. We're going to read it in this video too, but then you have it to go look back on. So for now, let's read a quick story to learn about how we view the world around us. This is kind of one of those little parables, which is a story that teaches a lesson. So you can kind of think about it while we're reading. So this story is from the 7 Habits book, and I thought it was a really great story to kind of teach perspective. So we're going to read it together. It says, a teen named Christy once shared with me how she loved the beauty of the mountains. One day she went to visit her eye doctor and, to her surprise, discovered that her sight was much worse than she had thought. After putting in her new contacts, she was astonished at how well she could see. As she put it, I realized the mountains and trees and even the signs on the side of the road have more detail than I had ever imagined. It was the strangest thing. I didn't know how bad my eyes were until I experienced how good they could be. So let's unpack this a little bit. I want you to take a second and think about Christy's story. You can even reread it if you can, or if you have to. So you can pause the video here to reread the story if you'd like. So now we'll unpack Christy's story a little bit. So she talked and talked about how much she loved the beauty of the mountains, right? She thought they were the most gorgeous thing, right? She would go hiking on the weekend. She had pictures of them in her locker, whatever it was, right? Imagine how much she loves them. One day she goes to her eye doctor and realizes she loved the mountains all along, even though she couldn't see them as half as well as she thought she could. Right? She even said that last sentence is really striking. I didn't know how bad my eyes were until I experienced how good they could be. So she's looking at all these things and viewing her life in a specific way. And then she realizes, oh, I didn't realize how bad it was because I didn't know how good it could be. So I think that story is really striking. So let's kind of think and unpack it a little bit. So how does Christy getting new contacts change her perspective? So as soon as her vision changes, right, what does she realize about her life? What does she realize about these mountains that she loves so much? So again, you're going to go ahead and pause and move on into that section of the Google form. The reading is there again if you would like to look back at it. So go ahead and pause the video here. So hopefully you've responded in the Google form. You can go ahead and play the video again, or hopefully it's already playing. So at this point, we're kind of comparing Christy's story, her shift of vision, her change in the way she sees something. This is called a paradigm. So we're going to use this story to kind of transition us into this definition here. So a paradigm is the way you see something. It's your perspective is a synonym for paradigm. Another way you can view it is a reference point, right? So everything you can see standing or existing in one way, or your general belief, right? Our beliefs are based on our experiences, our life, the things we've seen, the people we've met, right? That's all builds our belief systems. So these are our paradigms, right? The experiences that we've had, the things that we've shared, the people we've met that have shaped the way we see the world around us. So paradigms can be really interesting. Let's talk about that a little bit. So imagining, right, our paradigm is the world around us. the world around us is all dark and stormy and gloomy, right? We can either choose to live in it, or what we can do is shift our paradigm. A paradigm is like putting on a pair of glasses. So even if the world around you is all dark and stormy, bad things are happening, right? Maybe it's actually raining if you don't like the rain. If you're somebody like me, I love the rain, so I'd be happy. But putting on a pair of glasses to change the negativity around you is what's called shifting your paradigm. So as soon as we put on those different paradigm glasses, we choose to see the positive, right? The negative self-talk we talked about earlier, right? And all of those different I can't, never, nothing quotes. That changes, right? It's all the way we choose to talk about our experiences around us. So even just me saying just then, right, how much I love the rain and I really like it. It's nice to sit inside when it's gloomy and read a book and have a cup of coffee and whatever else. That's a shift of paradigm. So instead of saying, oh, I can't go outside and, play or hang out on the trails today. I can't go outside and run. I can't go outside and play with my friends. Changing our paradigm to say, oh, I can't do that, but I can do this, right? That changes that negative self-talk and helps shift our paradigm. So we're going to read a little bit about paradigms and principles in the 7 Habits book. So you're going to go back to that Google form. There is a link to the reading, and the reading is should be also posted on Classroom. I know my classes have it posted. If your teacher didn't post it, it's in the Google form in the reading, or the reading is in the Google form in the description. So in the last section, you should see a link to the reading, which should be all about paradigms and principles from the 7 Habits book. You're going to go ahead and read and respond to the questions about that reading. If you would like to hear me read the article aloud, there is also a link in the description of me reading the entire article. It goes to a YouTube link, so you can read along with me if you want to listen to it almost like an audiobook. So those are your options. Go ahead and complete that section, and thanks for listening.